I just want to, on a personal note of gratitude and appreciation, mention that Dr. John Kabat-Zinn was indeed my first meditation teacher when we were both in our 30s, about 30 years ago. I also wanted to say I expect everybody is familiar with the mindfulness-based stress reduction that John started at the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine, Healthcare, and Society at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. And I wanted to mention, just to give a little bit of historical context that I expect John remembers, and probably a lot of you know, and that is that time was when John was not sure that the mindfulness-based stress reduction program was going to fly at all. And in a story in Hippocrates magazine in the year 2000, John said that back in 1979, when MBSR was a pilot program at UMass Medical Center, he wondered if people would come to a stress reduction program based on the principles and practices of Buddhist meditation. After a moment's reflection, he continued, after 20 years and 11,000 medical patients, I think it's fair to say that the program has struck a certain chord. 30 years later, in 2011, the program has grown exponentially, and in addition, there are hundreds of stress reduction clinics around the world based on John's mindfulness model. I wanted to add that in this very same magazine interview, John spoke of a 1998 study of psoriasis patients undergoing ultraviolet light treatments for psoriasis, and the experimental group, who had meditation instructions piped into the cylindrical light boxes where they stood naked, their eyes covered with protective shields, experienced a skin clearing rate 4 times faster than that of the control group, who did not receive meditation instructions during their treatment. John noted in this same story that he and his group had first conducted that study 10 years previously and were disinclined to believe the results they were seeing. So they repeated the study 10 years later, and in 1998, same results. So here we are, 32 years since the mindfulness-based stress reduction was a pilot program, and more mindfulness-related discoveries and events than one might have initially been disinclined to believe are occurring. For some years now, the Dalai Lama has been in ongoing dialogues with John, leading neuroscience and meditation adepts, primarily Buddhist monks, who have practiced meditation for 10,000 hours or more, and with the Dalai Lama's blessing, some of these meditation adepts have spent hours in functional MRI machines in Western laboratories to see what effects mindfulness might have had on the structural and functional level of their brains. We're seeing a lot of results from those studies. My intro is a little long. I'm going to skip over that piece. We're seeing similar, if less dramatic, results in experienced lay practitioners, clearly demonstrating that the beneficial effects of meditation are dose-related and lending greater authority to John's oft-repeated dictum to get your ass on the cushion. So, today, the study of mindfulness with roots in healthcare in John's 1979 pilot program at UMass Medical Center is making significant contributions to the fields of communication, conflict resolution, leadership, psychotherapy, communication, conflict resolution, leadership, psychotherapy, cognitive science, education, end-of-life care, and many more. And more is being added to this list each year. One might even say, to quote Andrew Olinsky, the Center for the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies Executive Director, who is here with us tonight, that we are in the midst of a mindfulness movement that will continue to have a profound effect on many fields of endeavor for years and decades and centuries to come. It's an incredible honor to welcome the lovely man who is at the center of this mindfulness movement, my friend and mentor, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn.
just to remind myself, because you give titles to these things like 6 months or a year before it actually happens, then you forget what you said and what you had in mind. So I'm going to read the title of this thing, which maybe none of you have even seen, so it's putting myself in a little bit of a box. But a more mindful society might depend on us. Okay, so those are kind of really challenging words, because probably we could all benefit from a more mindful society, but the natural sort of inclination is to have someone else take care of it for us. And I think part of my message tonight is that no one else is going to take care of anything for us. We'll need to take care of things for ourselves. And that everybody's contribution, if you feel like this is of any value, is important. And if you don't feel like it's of any value, well, I don't know what the hell you're doing in the room tonight anyway, because, meditation is like a lot like nothing. And, you probably have better things to do, even on a Monday night, than come and hear someone talk about nothing. And if we really got into it, even if you thought it was something, at the end you'd probably begin feeling that it's nothing, and you are trying to figure out how close you are to the door and how to exit gracefully. And, so I'd like to, this evening, sort of give you a little bit of a landscape of what mindfulness really is, because as Nancy said, it's becoming more and more popular, and it's got a buzz. And how many of you are associated with Lesley University in one way or another? Raise your hands. Okay, so this is a Lesley crowd. It's not like just people with nothing to do in Harvard Square who decided, oh, wow, a mindfulness talk. Could be, But so the full title of the talk, which is actually quite long, is A More Mindful Society Might Depend on Us, embodying our beauty. So you might immediately say, what's he talking about? Embodying our beauty and our wholeness in our lives and in the world. Okay, and this is billed as a conversation and inquiry with John Kabat-Zinn. So I'm not going to give a kind of formal lecture. And I'm not going to show PowerPoint slides. And I'm not going to talk at any length about the science or about the clinical medicine. But I may allude to all sorts of those in trying to, in some sense, paint something of an impressionistic tableau. But my intention in doing this is really to connect, to establish some kind of resonances with all of us here, in part because, well, just think about it for a minute. Why did you come here? I mean, did you come, just to hear a talk, or just like any other talk, or was there something special about this? And before we get started, I too want to just extend my gratitude to the Sonnabend family for everything you've done for and continue to do for Lesley University, and just say I feel very privileged to be here. And through my connections with Susan Geer and Nancy and now a whole bunch of other people, since I was here at graduation and got to feel something very powerful. I was like totally cynical about graduation. I never went to my own graduation. I did when I graduated from MIT. I didn't go. They sent me the diploma, so I know I graduated. But I was kind of like alienated. Why would you want to go to graduation? Well, I learned at your graduation why it might be good to go to your graduation. It was beautiful. It was a gorgeous ceremony, and you could feel from the graduates, both undergraduate and graduates, that something profound had happened in their lives. And there was a celebratory atmosphere around it, and it was profound. And, this is, to me, what higher education really is all about. And I found it very moving. So I found myself several times today in talking with both the students and the faculty, alluding to the fact that, you're one university among many in the Boston area, and some of them have, sort of really august reputations that are like, in the stratosphere. But a lot of the time, they're really not anywhere near as advanced as what's going on here. In terms of some of the most fundamental things having to do with education, like learning how to live, for instance. And this is not just a matter of higher education. Mindfulness is now coming up through the floorboards in primary and secondary education. And part of it is that, the teachers are finding that they, for one reason or another, and of course there's a lot of, social and economic and chaotic, political and economic turmoil around education in this society, and in particular public education. But the teachers wind up really, in some sense, not being able to teach, in part because the children are coming in not ready to learn. Not ready to learn. Many of them haven't even had breakfast. And many of them are coming out of environments where you actually wouldn't want to know what happened to them before they showed up in school that morning. But not ready to learn. So part of education really has to be to educate ourselves as to how to tune the instrument so that it can play. Even the greatest orchestras like the Boston Symphony Orchestra, I've made a careful study of it, and I've noted that every time they give a concert or perform, they spend a good deal of time tuning first. They don't say, we're so great with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, we've got the greatest instruments, we're the greatest musicians, we understand the music, we don't have to tune. They never say that. They always tune. So, in a sense, we need to learn how to tune the instrument, and what better time to learn than when you're little? Okay, because I remember, as a product of the New York public school system, that a lot of the time the teachers would yell at me, or my colleagues, the other kids, pay attention. Sometimes they would scream, pay attention. Now, nobody pays better attention when someone's screaming at you to pay attention. It's like, well, what about teaching us how to pay attention? Well, mindfulness is really all about attention. It's all about attention and what arises out of attending. And what arises out of attending is called awareness. And you might say, well, okay, big deal. What's the big deal about that? Well, the big deal is that we don't ever get any kind of formal exposure to awareness as a kind of universe that could be inhabited and that has definite virtues to inhabiting this capacity that is profound, at least as profound as thinking. And you can see that instantly because whatever thought or emotion, for that matter, arises within you in any moment, you can be aware of it. And in being aware of it, you modulate and shift and change the energy of that thought or that emotion. And a lot of our thoughts and emotions are actually destructive, toxic, dangerous, harmful to ourselves, as well as leading to harmful actions to others. And if we have no relationship to those thoughts, if we are sort of basically out of relationship to them as thoughts, then what will we do? One, we'll experience them as the truth. And we will act on them in ways that are completely diluted. Do you know what I'm talking about, or have I lost you already? Okay, and this can happen 100,000 times in a day. And therefore, we may wind up living our lives day by day or moment by moment more or less out of touch with what's really going on. Now, have you ever been in one of those kind of emotional contractions where you got incredibly angry, your body sort of seething and writhing, and the jaw locks and you contract in that kind of way, and the fists form and everything, and somebody who loves you in your family is trying to tell you that you're misinterpreting what that person said? that they're not as hateful and detestable and contemptible as you think. But in that particular moment, how open are you to getting that message, to hearing that message? Not open at all. Because once we are offended or triggered in one way or another to take anything as a frontal assault, a personal assault on our personhood, then we are primed for delusion and deluded activity. Have you ever had an experience of that where you said something that as soon as it came out of your mouth, all of a sudden you got real clear. But before it came out of your mouth, you were not clear at all. And out it came, and then you feel humiliated, embarrassed, just by your own lack of awareness of what you were doing. It's almost like we go on autopilot, completely robotic, and then we're like a bull in a china shop, especially when it comes to emotion. And of course, as I said this afternoon with the students, usually we save our best for the people we love the most. We let them have it, both barrels. We kind of keep ourselves under wraps at work and in public, but when we get home, man, all bets are off. So this awareness that is cultivated by paying attention intentionally, on purpose, in the present moment. Why in the present moment? Because that's the only moment we're ever alive in. So you can't pay attention in the past, and you can't pay attention in the future. And to the degree that you can pay attention to the past, or to pay attention to whatever we call the future, that is happening in the present. So the future and the past are actually completely embedded in now. And then that we bring this attention to what's unfolding in a way that is non-judgmental. Okay? In other words, we're going to agree beforehand as part of the rules of the game. The rules on the playing field are that we will not be judgmental. Of course, that's a game ender, because we got judgments about everything. You name it, we got 10 judgments about it. Even if we don't know anything about it, we got plenty of opinions about it. And when you couple that with liking and disliking, I love this, I hate that, he's great, she's terrible, on and on and on. It's almost as if we've got this screen in front of our eyes, our ears, every aspect of our relationality to the world, where things are colored by our own likes and dislikes, hopes and fears, ambition, whatever it is. And therefore, it's very difficult to see clearly. Very difficult to see clearly. And it's very difficult when you're caught up in emotional reactivity to actually learn anything. And of course, the learning comes from seeing. It comes from that moment that Arthur Zions calls the aperçu, where you actually get something. How many of you are students at the moment? And I'm not talking about the teachers, because of course you're always a lifelong student. But how many of you are actually matriculated as students here? Raise your hands. Fabulous. I'm so happy that you're here. Okay, because, and it's true, we're all students, and we need to be students for life, so we're continually learning. But in order to learn, we have to be willing to be in a space where we can, at a particular moment, see, get it, whatever it is. Can you remember any one moment in class or doing homework or whatever it is where, like, you batting your head against the wall and then all of a sudden you get it? It becomes clear. Of course, the teachers then have an epiphany experience because, like, my students actually understand. That's fabulous. But this is a precious moment. I would say actually a sacred moment in teaching, and part of what's involved in the sort of teacher-student dance is that we are co-creating more and more possibilities for clarity, for deep seeing. And what are we seeing? We're seeing the landscape or the topology or the geometry or the geography of relationship. How this relates to that. So mindfulness, Operationally, we define it as the awareness that arises by paying attention on purpose in the present, non-judgmentally. Okay? But another way to think of it is that mindfulness is a way of being. This is not a technique. I'm not talking about some dime store meditation technique where you cross your legs, follow the instructions, and everything turns out great. If you do it right. Then you'll have a special feeling. That will be the feeling you're looking for. We'll check you off and say, yep, you pass, and then you'll be enlightened. Or you have 100 million of those, and then we check you off and say you're enlightened. No, it's not a technique. There are an infinite number of techniques, and they're really wonderful, but it's in the service of something much bigger. And I'm using the word mindfulness in the much bigger way, like an umbrella, a term that includes a lot when we're talking about awareness. Okay? And what it will also include heartfulness. So if you hear the word mindfulness, in all Asian languages, the word for mind and the word for heart is the same word. So if you hear the word mindfulness, or you find it coming out of your own mouth, if in some sense it's not freighted with the feeling tone of heartfulness, it's not mindfulness. Okay? Compassion is woven into there. We're talking about relationality. Now, if we're interested in living our lives, say, as if they really mattered, and of course, if you're missing most of your moments, that's not a good prescription for living your life as if it really mattered, because a lot of what happens when you're out to lunch matters. Just if you're in relationship with somebody else, they'll be happy to tell you that. A lot of divorces happen because people say, hey, I thought I married you, somebody, but the underlying assumption was you would continue to, in some sense, remain present. And if you, check out emotionally or check out, cognitively or, or somatically, and you're just kind of out to lunch for too long, it's not a prescription for a deepening satisfaction in the relationship. So aside from that formal operational definition that I gave you of mindfulness being, and I'll repeat it because it's good to keep hearing it, the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, can also think of it, as I said, as a way of being in relationship. In relationship to what? Whatever you want. You name it. That's one of the reasons it's so powerful, is that it's generalizable. It's generally applicable to virtually anything. There are very few things, I said, except deep sleep, and then some neuroscientists said probably even in deep sleep, there are very few things that don't go better when we are fully embodied and present for them. Maybe you'll come up with a few, but I can't think of too many. It's really helpful to be here. And you can notice even the tonal quality in the language, because the tendency in English would be to say to be there. It's really important to be there. But when you're in the present moment, there's no there. It's here. And it's now. And if you start to pay attention, bring this mindfulness to where your mind is at. You start to pay attention to your own mind and to where your attention is. It's shocking. Check it out sometime when you have a moment. How many of you would describe yourselves as in some way or other, and let's leave the category sort of amorphous, in some way or other, you have a regular meditation practice that you care about and that nurtures you in some way? Raise your hands up. So, okay, maybe 40%, maybe 50%. And the rest of you, I'm not even going to bother guessing. But, if you come to something like this, and we've established that you already have many better things to do, there must be some kind of resonance here. And maybe you've tried to meditate forever, and you have this little thought in your mind, I've tried it, but every time I try, it's a great idea, but every time I try it, it seems like it's either the wrong time or it's like, just doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is it's not supposed to work. And no one told you that. Right. Okay? We have independent confirmation. It's not supposed to work. There's nothing that's supposed to happen except this. And this is already happening. It's unfolding. It's what is unfolding. Have you ever had the thought in your life? Sometimes this really happens around families, you know. But have you ever had the thought in your life that when the proverbial stuff started to hit the proverbial fan, has the thought ever floated through your mind, I didn't sign up for this? I guess we have at least one taker. I mean, because, you know, we have our ideas and opinions about what life is going to be like when and then you fill out the blank. You know, fill in the blank, graduate from Lesley, you know, or graduate from graduate school in Lesley, or get married, or get divorced, or have children, or, you know, whatever it is. We always think like we have this idea of how it's going to be, and then it's how it is. And it's like, sometimes the distance is so great, you say, holy cow, I mean, how did I get into this family? You were born into it. It's called the human family. And so the question is, can we actually work with what is arising as opposed to insisting that, no, we have to arrange the entire furniture of the universe so that it works for me, so that I can like have the life that I want to have? Have you noticed how much energy that takes to rearrange the universe constantly so that it's working out for you? It's not hard work, you know. Should get a couple of PhDs in that one. And we're all masters of it. The trouble is, that really doesn't work. That is the source of enormous amount of suffering. But meditation's not supposed to work in the sense that it's not like some special feeling or some special state of mind or body or relation that you, oh, that's what John's been talking about all these years. Yes. Yeah. Because I'll tell you, if you have some special state and the mind likes to sort of label it, that's what it is. Oh, wow, my body fell away. I felt like, you know, completely in harmony with the universe. The next moment, something different's going to happen. And then you'll feel a loss. Oh, I was enlightened. And then all of a sudden I'm the same old schlep I always was. I had this deep insight, only now I can't remember what it is. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's not like you made a mistake. You didn't do the meditation correctly. It's like you got the message wrong at the beginning. It's not about getting somewhere else. In the Heart Sutra, which is like the greatest sutra, the greatest teaching of Mahayana Buddhism, that's the Zen tradition and everything, it says, no, there's no place to go, nothing to do, and nothing to attain. So why the hell would one come to a talk on that? No place to go, nothing to do, nothing to attain. That might be actually pointing at something. I'm going to throw something out to you that you'll probably have a hard time with. When I throw it out, just watch and see whether you're having a hard time with it. You're already perfect, just the way you are. I see people laughing hysterically, snickering. You're perfect. So in the next moment, in your own mind, did you notice some kind of counter statement coming up yet? Something of like, yeah, he doesn't know who I am or whatever. Like, you know, he thinks I'm perfect. You know, what a joke. And I know all that. And that's perfect too. Warts, pimples, everything, it's all perfect. Okay? You are perfectly who and what you already are. And most of the time, we don't live anywhere near that territory. We live in the territory of what's wrong with us, the stories that we build around where we are, who we are, where we're going, how great it's going to be, and then we crash and burn when it comes out different. It's guaranteed to be different because you can't hold on to it and fix something. This is the way it has to be because the world, the nature of the world is called the law of impermanence. It's like everything is always changing. So if you try to hold on to something and say, yep, that's me, then you are basically writing yourself a prescription for suffering. Lots of suffering. Endless suffering. And it's real easy to blame everything and everybody and circumstances and what happened to me and everything else in the world about it, except to look at yourself. And wonder, which is in some sense the beginning of the possibility of liberation, of freedom from our own, self-imposed prisons of thought and emotion and, contracted behavior. That we actually are the source of that. And that when we simply write ourselves a little restraining order, or at least notice that we're doing it, there's a whole other universe that we can inhabit right now, right in the present moment, without having to make yourself over, improve yourself, do anything other than be. Actually, we call ourselves human beings, but we almost never practice being. So why do I have to practice if I'm a human being? Well, just look at your life. Running around like crazy. Always trying to get someplace else. Being driven. Doing. Well, there's nothing wrong with doing. I'm not myself a monastic, and I don't live in a cave. And obviously I wouldn't be here talking to you if I felt the cave was better. I'd stay in my cave. So it doesn't mean that meditation's going to prevent you from committing to action or doing things, but it might help to know what you're doing. I'm glad you see the humor in that. It might actually help to know what you're doing, and it might actually help even more if you knew who was doing all this doing. I remember when back in Cambridge many years ago, I was studying with a Korean Zen master named Sung San, who some of you know anyway. And he used to teach a form of meditation where he would talk about keeping the mind that doesn't know. Of course, we've been so overeducated that it's all about knowing, right? I mean, it's what you know. Do they test on an exam? They're testing what you know, right? And only it's so humiliating because usually what they're finding out is how much we don't know. But that's all on a cognitive level. And the knowing I'm talking about is more akin to awareness rather than to cognitive, conceptual knowing. It's part of it, but it's only a part of it. So he used to sort of demonstrate for his students. He'd say, you have to picture a round Korean face, fairly impressive guy in robes, shaved head, and he'd sit up there in the sort of cross-legged posture, and he'd imitate for us as beginning meditators how to cultivate this don't know mind that and his English was just very creative. He didn't know any, but he just made it up as he went along. So it was wonderful. I mean, just fabulous. And he would puff himself up like this, straighten up, and you have to picture the robes and Zen stick and all of this coming in. He'd say, "What am I?" He'd say, "What am I?" And then he'd get a quizzical look on his face. This is all with his eyes closed. And he'd say, "Don't know." What am I? Don't know. It's very powerful to actually cultivate the mind that doesn't know. And even if you're a student, the mind that doesn't have to know. Because the mind that doesn't have to know, I've found in my own life, gets in the way of actually any kind of learning whatsoever. Because it's a little desperate. And it's driven by anxiety. And it identifies with my value as opposed to because of what I don't know. And so I'm trying to know things because I'm anxious about what people will think about me if I am ignorant, if I don't know. That's ignorance writ large. What about actually the learning coming not out of fear of not knowing and embarrassment, but out of love? Just as a thought. What about if the learning was you couldn't help yourself? It was just so incredibly interesting. You just love this stuff. And you turn towards it and open to whatever it is, and you love it in particular, in the particulars, and it becomes a dance of ongoing learning and those moments of seeing, or the beauty of not knowing, and all of a sudden you see. That's all scientific discoveries, all breakthroughs are based on not knowing. If you let what you know get in the way too much, you got to know it. It's not like, oh, you just don't know anything, and then, you'll have great insights. No, you have to embrace in awareness everything that you know, but then allow it to be there and cook without having to make anything happen, do anything, force anything, or feel bad about yourself if nothing is coming. And then all of a sudden you have these eureka moments, or insights, or clarity arises. How? We don't even know. But tremendous creativity, imagination, and insight arise out of not knowing, out of stillness, out of being. And this is a stillness that doesn't have any problem with movement. This is a silence that doesn't have any problem with sound or speech. This is a knowing that is beyond this and that. Sort of a non-dual awareness that doesn't get caught in the fractionated, fractal geometry of our own thinking. And we're very, very unfamiliar with our thinking. How many of you study cognitive therapy or do cognitive therapy, do something like that? Well, not that many in this crowd. Okay, but thoughts. But that doesn't matter, because you're all prisoners of your own thoughts. I mean, sorry. We all are. It's unavoidable. But that's not a problem, because as soon as you notice it, then you're not. Okay? So the question is, can we bring awareness to and befriend our thoughts and realize that they're just thoughts and they're not true. There are very, very few thoughts that are actually true. And you can question their veracity, but first you have to realize that they're not true. But if you're taking everything personally, then you're in trouble. So now, let me ask you a question. Is what I've been saying so far, does that sound like quietism or complacency to you? Is there even the slightest little hint that this means you should just retire to a cave and contemplate your navel and give up your social justice or relationships with other human beings and just go for the full enlightenment experience? You know, the $2,500,000 enchilada? I don't think so. I hope not. The real meditation practice isn't sitting like this or isn't walking. We teach all these practices, by the way, so I'm not disrespecting them. But if you mistake them for the practice, you've made a mistake. Because the real meditation practice is how you live your life from moment to moment. It's that simple. And it's that hard. This turns out, folks, to be just about the hardest work in the world. The hardest work in the world. I don't know exactly why it's so hard for human beings to show up for a moment and to put our opinions and likes and dislikes on hold and to actually let go of the future and let go of the past and just be here for a moment and to not know, which is akin to knowing. I mean, not knowing that you don't know is deep wisdom. Because then you can be open to, what does that sound? Don't know. Whose cell phone is that? Don't know. And, you know, I mean, to come back to Sansanim for a moment, when you're working with an Asian, teacher or somebody from any other culture, well, the law of impermanence, the probability is it won't last forever, So, and we do not have to be distracted by it. We do not actually have to be at all distracted or disturbed by sounds. Maybe it's Barack Obama calling. I don't know. So, of course, his students would go around and like become impossible, you know. So everything you say, like, where's the bathroom? Don't know. What are you doing next weekend? Don't know. Which, of course, is absurd. But to just maintain the framework of relationality so that we're not so caught up in linear discursive thinking, important. Now, they did a study recently at the University of Toronto where they took people who were trained in, as you heard, MBSR, which it turns out is an 8-week-long course, clinic in the form of a course, which is spread to over 700 medical centers and hospitals and clinics worldwide at this point. Just MBSR, not MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. But they took people who were trained in MBSR and people who were not trained in MBSR, and they did brain scans on them and found that the people without training in MBSR, when they were given adjectives that were supposed to self-describe how they were, you know, positive adjectives, negative adjectives, neutral adjectives, it triggered a huge amount of activity in what's called the medial frontal cortex. Huge in the midline, you know, here. And that is the region of the brain that's been associated in other studies with what's called the default mode. In other words, they study people when they tell them to do nothing. Just do nothing, and then we'll see what your brain is doing. The number of different imaginative ringtones is infinite. So it turns out when we're doing nothing, when we're doing nothing, there's actually a lot of activity going on in the brain. And what we're doing is deeply associated with mind wandering. And if you know the work of Dan Gilbert, who used cell phones to actually connect with people and ask them at random, what are you doing and how happy are you at the moment? It turns out that, and how aware are you that you know what's going on? It turns out that most of the time when you catch people like that on their cell phones and they respond what they're doing and so forth, and they had hundreds and hundreds of people in this study, it turns out, and there was a big headline in the New York Times about it, people whose mind wander are really unhappy. And the more your mind wanders, the more unhappy you are. It's like they're just not happy, okay? Happiness is already here, is the implication. If we pay attention, we have the potential, because when are you going to be happy? When is there going to be time for you to be happy? When it's time for you to be happy, if you check your watch, it'll be now. Why not now? So when they looked at the brain scans of people who had been trained in MBSR, using the same adjective list and everything, what they found was a whole other circuit in the brain, which is a temporal circuit, a lateral circuit, which is direct experiencing of the present moment. So even when we're sitting doing nothing, if you're mindful, well, you're actually completely embodied. You're actually sensing, being with the unfolding moment-by-moment experiencing of the body. Hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, interoception, proprioception. I mean, a lot going on in any moment. And that's how we know the world, through our senses. How do you think that we understand what's going on in the sky? Since Galileo, we've been turning towards the sky with instruments that extend our sight, that extend our hearing, that extend the spectrum from the visible range to the infrared and the ultraviolet and the gamma rays and X-rays. And, we're extending the senses. All scientific instruments are extensions of the senses. But if we didn't have any senses, what would we know? How would we be in relationship to anything? So literally, meditation is coming to your senses. How do you know you're breathing? Someone told you? You took biology in high school? How do you know you're breathing? You feel it. you can check. I hope everybody's breathing, but check just to make sure. That's a very, very rich capacity that we have. And you don't have to have a lot of thoughts about your breathing. In fact, you probably aren't thinking about your breathing at all. Except when you start to meditate, then you start to think a lot about your breathing, and it gets in the way of experiencing your breathing. And often we'll even ask people, well, what's your meditation practice? And they'll say, well, I sit down and I sit in a dignified posture and I think about my breathing. And never heard a meditation teacher say, think about your breathing. What they say is, feel your breathing. Be aware of your breathing. No one ever says think about. But in our minds, we confound them immediately. Anything that has to do with paying attention, think about. Well, think about is like putting an iron curtain between you and experience. There's the experience, and then there's all your thoughts about the experience. That's like impenetrable. But if you just go with this lateral network, which MBSR trains, the mindfulness trains, then you've got, and they are uncoupled. So is there still thinking going on about me and my life and everything else? Of course. So there's still activity in the medial region, but there's this other activity in the lateral region, and they are what's called uncoupled. In other words, they are in relationship to each other in a way that adds value. There's nothing wrong with thinking, and there's nothing wrong with generating narratives about our experience. But when we lose touch with the body, for instance, and we lose touch with the direct sensory experience, it's a little bit like that line from James Joyce that I love so much in Dubliners, where he says, Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body. That was his address. Okay? So you check it out sometime, see what's the distance between you and your body in any given moment. Woody Allen's very funny about that. He's just exist from here up, The less I know about underneath, the better, except at special times. But we can be seriously out of touch. And coming to our senses means dropping back in. When? In the only moment you ever have. Oh my God, it's now, again. Now imagine what it would be like if you lived that way. That you actually were aware that it's now. And you let the world speak to you through all of our different ways of knowing. And the Buddhists would say that awareness is itself a sense. Then you can actually navigate your life in a way that's not possible when you're going through the world like a billiard ball. It's just like barreling through. So that then, we can begin to navigate, and we begin to pick up on cues from other people and become more relational, more emotionally intelligent, more, all sorts of things that will allow us to actually improve the quality of not only our lives, but the lives of the people that we live with, work with, are in community with, and maybe want to collaborate with to add value to the world in various ways, depending on what you care about, what your inclinations are. So that meditation really becomes living your life as if it really mattered, in the only time you'll ever have. And if you think that you've got plenty of time, and so you'll get into that later because it's so boring to do, you'll just wait till you're old. No problem. That'll happen very quickly. I can tell you from experience. Last time I looked, I was 20. Now I'm 67. I have no idea how that happened. But if you want more moments, if you want to live longer, the more moments you're present for, the more longer your life is. If you go on autopilot for 10 years and miss what's most important and most beautiful in your life, time goes by very quickly, and all of a sudden, whoops, how did this happen? But you'll know if you're paying attention from moment to moment. Not only that, you can change the future. We talked about this afternoon. How many of you in some way or other are committed to changing the future? Raise your hands. I hope so. Well, in my experience, the only way you can change the future is by inhabiting the present. If you inhabit the present, the future is already, the next moment is already different because you're here for this one. If you're out to lunch for this one, it's going to color the next one, wouldn't you say? More likely than not. So if we really want to change the future, anything you can do about that feedback? Maybe if I come forward? The only thing that you can really do is own your life in the moment that you have. That is a huge, what I call orthogonal rotation in consciousness. Nothing's any different. You're the same old schlep you were the moment before, except you're awake. Except you're awake. And that exception is enormous. People used to apocryphally go up to the Buddha and say, "Are you a god?" And he said, "No, I'm awake." That's what this is about. It's about waking up from the somnambulance of automatic pilot. Now that has implications for learning, for growing, for healing, for transformation, for education, for virtually every human endeavor. Because our endeavors and the energy that we can bring to it is no better than the quality of our attention and the awareness that we can mobilize to embrace it so that we see things in their fullness. Otherwise, we tend to sort of introduce a certain kind of skewedness to it. And things can often be out of joint. And we want them to work out this way, but they work out that way. Are you following this? Does this make any sense to you? So that would, in some sense, be the meditation practice. And then I'm going to stop and we'll have some dialogue. But before I do, I want to just give you one other tip about meditation practice. Then we'll do some and then we'll have the dialogue. Would that be okay with you? Are you up for actually practicing? Well, I got news for you. We've been practicing since we started. This is, an inquiry. It doesn't always look like silence. You've been paying exquisite attention. How do I know? Because I'm sentient. I can feel it. I can feel you. So this is the tip. To bring awareness to how frequently during the day you take things personally. And an easy way to do this is to be mindful of our use of the personal pronouns. Do you know what the personal pronouns are? I, me, mine. The singular personal pronouns. Then we, and then, But I'm talking about the I, me, mine collection. To be aware of how much of what goes on in your mind is the story of me. The story of me has a lot of different plots. One plot is the story of how pathetic I am. Do you know that one? How wounded. I'm not belittling any of this. This is life or death, folks. But part of it is how unworthy, how wounded, how inadequate. Okay? That's a story. It's not true. It's not true. We relate to the people who come to the stress reduction clinic, no matter what their diagnosis, no matter what's the matter with them, no matter how many parts of their body are missing, no matter what's happened to them in their childhood, no matter what is going on with them, we relate to them as if they are geniuses and miraculous beings. Why not? They're human beings. If we were to start to just discuss for a second the virtues of your liver, for instance, and what it does, and how it relates to your metabolism, and how the skin is involved, and how the immune system is involved, and how the nervous system is involved, and how the brain is involved, and how the heart is involved. And all of these things are going on while you've been listening. And also, amazing, you've even kept up the breathing. Nobody's died since I started talking. Wouldn't you say? It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's miraculous. If we took out our livers and we just put them all up here on the stage, and we turned around 3 times, and then you went and picked up yours, you probably wouldn't not be sure. Like, is that my liver? I mean, I don't know. They all kind of look the same. And it would be the same for your heart or the same for your kidney or anything else. But we take it all very personally. You know, it's like, this is my career, my future, my body, my opinion, and we get heated around it. You know, but if you start to take this universe of 10 trillion cells that you would call you, that's been on the planet for a while, but that actually originated in a nucleation of one cell, and then differentiated into all these miraculous tissues where, I tell you, the liver does not know how to pump blood. And the heart does not know how to generate enzymatic reactions that the liver does and detoxify. But together they cooperate, along with the lungs, which are absolutely required, and everything else to actually keep this dance going. So for you to think you're anything less than a miraculous being is kind of a little bit off. And if you look at any of those 10 trillion cells, or check out your liver, or your hips, or anything else, unless you have artificial hips, you're not going to find a little stamp on them with a serial number saying, oh, this is John Kabat-Zinn. Nowhere in looking through my body will I find anything that resembles John Kabat-Zinn. And yet John Kabat-Zinn can get kind of huffy around, like, hey, wait, this is my body. It's my breath. And I like to joke, I said this earlier in the day, I know it's your breath. But let's face it, if it was up to you, whoever that you is that wants to claim ownership of the breath, if it was up to you to keep the breath going, you would have died a long time ago. Whoops, forgot, got distracted. Dead. So in the order of things, you, whoever you are, the personal pronoun, whatever it's pointing to, isn't allowed anywhere near the brainstem and the phrenic nerve and whatever, the diaphragm or whatever keeps us breathing. Just nowhere near it, and the heart as well. Like, you stay out of it, John Kabat-Zinn. Just you and your opinions, and you can improve on it and everything. You can't improve on this. It's perfect. It's perfectly what it is. Now, that doesn't mean that things don't go wrong in the body, that we're not mortal, that we don't have accidents, that we don't have untoward things happen to us that are incredibly painful and that cause enormous suffering. And still there's the question, how are we going to be in relationship to it? That's where the mindfulness comes in. Okay, so this has arisen. That's a fact. How are we going to be in relationship to it? There we have freedom. Even Frederick Frank, who wrote about his experience in concentration camp, where everything is taken away. Everything is taken away. You have no control over anything. But he said the one thing that we can never, ever not have control over, if we choose to, is how we are going to be in relationship to what is happening to us. That's where you don't lose your dignity. You may lose your life, but you're not going to lose your dignity. It's important. So to be on the lookout for the personal pronouns, and one way to think about it is a friend of mine and Andy's named Larry Rosenberg, who's one of the great meditation teachers on the planet and happens to teach in Cambridge at the Cambridge Insight Meditation Center, which on Broadway, in sort of Central Square. I recommend that you go and study with him and his colleagues there. But he calls this perpetual habit of making ourselves the center of the universe. The story of me, written big letters on the marquee. Hey, playing Now playing The Story of Me, starring me. The most interesting movie in the world. With me as the star. And you as all bit players in my movie. And the interesting thing is, I'm a bit player in your movie. We're all bit players in each other's movies of how great we are, or how horrible we are, or how blah we are, or whatever it is. Those are just stories. So, this is the tip. Watch the selfing as it unfolds moment by moment by moment. And just bringing awareness to it, you're already liberating yourself from it. You don't have to now beat yourself up because you're so self-involved and preoccupied and now you're the center of the universe. We knew that. No one escapes. But when you hold it in awareness with compassion and kindness, then you got 1,000 different ways to actually relate in the next moment that doesn't make that the default mode of, greed, hatred, and delusion, to just pick 3 things out of a hat. So selfing. And the personal pronouns, they give it away when you say, I can't tolerate this anymore. Who's talking? Who's the I that's getting self-righteous here and like, I can't tolerate this anymore, or I can't take this anymore? All of these I this, or I'm no good, or I'm too fat, or I'm too old, or I'm too stupid, or whatever it is. And just listen to it. Listen to it. And ask yourself, is this even remotely related to the actuality of things? Or have you just created some song that you've been playing so long that you believe it? And it becomes like a prison. It really becomes like a prison. And the irony is, the door is wide open. All you need to do is walk out. But to walk out, it takes being aware that the door is open. And a lot of the time, we feel more comfortable staying in the cage. So this has infinite applications. And Nancy mentioned that the interest in and funding for mindfulness research is just going exponential. The number of papers per year that are coming out on mindfulness in the medical and scientific literature are going exponential. Why? Because it's kind of an interesting door into understanding the nature of the human mind and heart and body. From what's called in science now, it used to be dismissed and discarded and condemned as a kind of subjectivity. Like, how can you know anything about meditating if you meditate? You've lost your objectivity. People used to accuse my friend Richard Davidson, who is the head of the Center for Investigating Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin and the head of the Laboratory of Affective Neuroscience, and one of the major people who developed affective neuroscience. And people used to say to him, Richie, if you want to study meditation, you can't meditate yourself because then you'd be completely biased. So he pointed out in his talk in New York City the other day that that's like saying to a cardiologist, really, you can't have a heart, and if you're going to really work with other people's hearts, because you'd be subjective in making decisions. So we have the potential here to really move into our lives in an entirely new way. And because mindfulness is becoming so popular nowadays, especially in psychological environments, in the human services, and in all sorts of university and medical settings, it's really important to know a few things. So I'll just summarize them. Number one, I didn't make this up. I didn't invent mindfulness. Okay? This is a stream, a tradition in human history that goes back thousands of years. And its most articulate manifestation and articulation is in the Buddhist tradition. But it is universal because it's about paying attention and it's about awareness and it's about compassion and it's about kindness. How do those get to be particularized as Buddhist or not Buddhist? The Buddha himself was not a Buddhist. The Buddha made some fundamental discoveries about the nature of mind and the nature of suffering. So what we're about here is, in some sense, trying to bring together this ancient wisdom with new ways of understanding through science, but that don't abandon the first-person elements of it, the actual engagement. It used to be called subjectivity, now it's called first-person experience. And now, high-level psychology and neuroscience understands that in order to understand the brain or the mind and what the relationship of the mind is to the brain and the body, it's really good if you have third-person experience. That would be, as in the old days, I mean, if you want to study somebody's mind, study somebody else's, because then you can be objective, you know. So the people whose minds they used to study, of course, are undergraduate psychology majors, because you got lots of them, lots of subjects. But they turn out to be very bad reporters about what's on their minds. They have no idea what's on their minds. So if you put them in an fMRI scanner and you see some kind of strange signal, and you say, what happened just then? They'll say, I don't know. But if you take a monk who's trained for thousands and thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours, in cultivating just what we've been talking about all evening, in lots of different ways, not just sitting in a cave, then, and you ask them what happened in that particular moment, they can actually report in great detail the quality of their attention, what the object of the attending was, what the feeling tone of it was, the affective tone, all sorts of topology that's not available to us because we haven't trained our minds in the same way as somebody who's trained their ear will hear an orchestra, like a symphony conductor, will hear an orchestra in an entirely different way from you or me. Why? They've trained the ear. Now we're talking about training the entirety of ourselves. So it requires third-person investigations. Yeah, put people in scanners, that's fine. But also first-person so that you know what they're doing in the scanner. And don't just have all these nice colored signals. And then it's also helpful, there's a second-person perspective, and that is the perspective of the teacher or the significant other. Because if you really want to zero in on the truth, you know, we're very bad reporters of our own experience. You know, you ask somebody's spouse whether it's true, they'll tell you the real story. Do you know what I'm saying? And so, you know, high-level sociological or psychological research includes that kind of second-person input, because then if you correlate that and everything correlates between first, second, and third person, then you have some confidence that what you're seeing is actually real. One more thing. Okay. I just say that I came from a conference in New York City. It's not fair to call it a conference. It was billed as a gathering called Creating a Mindful or a More Mindful Society. And it was basically people who care about this and who have been practicing very often for a long time and who've been studying, like Richie Davidson, for a very long time, studying meditation and so forth. And another person was there who gave the closing keynote, and that is a congressman in the United States Congress named Tim Ryan from Youngstown, Ohio, from the 17th District of Ohio, who happened to be come to a retreat of mine several years ago. And of course, why did he come to that retreat? You know, I mean, same reason you came to this talk. I mean, don't know. Right? I mean, you got lots of reasons for coming to this talk, but really, you don't know. You won't even know after the talk is over and you're leaving. But maybe 3 weeks from now you'll know, or 3 years from now, or 3 lifetimes from now. I don't know. But Tim has been actually so moved by his own experience of cultivating this quality of attention and awareness, that all of a sudden, like he is become an advocate in the Congress, and he happens to sit on the House Appropriations Committee on the subcommittees for the military, for education, for health, okay, which is what funds everything. And he is starting to say, hey, listen, don't you think it would be a good idea if we funded some projects in schools that actually educate kids to pay attention and to cultivate their own intrinsic capacity for kindness and social emotional intelligence? Wow, that's a radical suggestion, isn't it? That maybe we should do that. It's amazing. Okay? Imagine what healthcare would look like if more and more people took responsibility for their own health, wherever they are in the life trajectory, and worked in a more participatory medicine, where it's not an automechanics model of medicine, but we, in some sense, invite the full participation of each patient to whatever degree they care to involve with this, and train them in tapping the deep interior resources that we all have by virtue of being human for learning, for growing, for healing, and for transformation based on cultivating attention in the various ways that we've been talking about this evening. What about the military? Again, tremendous possibilities. Not to train the military to be better killers, but in fact, for them to be more sensitive and more discerning, so that in the kinds of wars that we have now, they're not exactly battle lines and everybody's wearing a uniform and you know who to shoot. But it's like kids running around and nobody's in uniform and you don't know the enemy from whatever, and a lot of the time you're hyped up and terrified. Well, there's a huge amount of indiscriminate killing. And that, of course, is devastating, of course, to the people who are killed and their families, and also to the people due to killing, because they're just like kids. They don't know even what the hell they're doing there. Nobody knows why we're there. You hear what I'm saying? Now, the war, when the heart and the liver, for instance, never go to war with each other. Biology is based on cooperativity. There's a professor at Harvard named Martin Nowak who wrote a book very recently, just on the bestseller list, I think, called Super Cooperators. I recommend you read it. He's a mathematician, by the way. But what he does is he does computer-simulated iterations of a game called The Prisoner's Dilemma, which has to do with altruism versus selfishness. More for me, or I take a little less, you get a little more, and they can look at evolution. It evolves. They have computer models where this thing evolves over thousands and millions of iterations of the game, and they can tweak the various things. And it turns out that cooperation is like intrinsic to humanity on every level. And when your cells don't cooperate, when the liver doesn't usually go to war with the heart, but the immune system will go to war with the whole thing, autoimmune diseases, devastation, absolutely devastation. And when, say, the liver decides that it's not going to listen anymore, and it's just going to grow because, like, hey, we're on the liver team, we don't care about the heart or anything else, we're just going to grow. You know what that's called? It's called cancer. So it's the loss of that kind of cooperativity, but it's built in biologically at the molecular signaling level, and disease, when you lose it, it's a disease. It's suffering. It's pain and suffering. So on the same national level of the body politic, for instance, it's a disease when we go to war with each other over this and that, liking, disliking, red, blue, Democrat, Republican. It's like we're shooting ourselves in the heart as a country and then do it all around the world. It's almost like foreign policy by immune reaction, like allergic reaction. And then so we have these kids there who don't really know what they're doing there, and enormous amount of harm. So the military is interested in mindfulness. I'm not going to say, no, I'm sorry, I don't talk to you guys. I'm still pissed about Vietnam. And just to say, to conclude, that Tim Ryan is actually writing a book that's coming out in a couple of months, in March. And the name of the book is A Mindful Nation. You've got a sitting congressman, and by the way, he's a fifth-term congressman, and he's 38 years old. Okay? And he really understands this is not an ego trip on his part. And he's just finished a book called A Mindful Nation. So what's possible? Don't know. But in some sense, what's possible and what's going to actualize depends on all of us, which brings me back to the title of my talk, which is, a more mindful society might depend on you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and me. Okay? And we don't need to have the answers. All we need to do is be willing to, not even, I won't even say put one foot in front of the other, but I'll say be aware of the one foot. And then this one usually knows how to come up. It's amazing, the level of intelligence in the body. So a more mindful society might depend on us, and then embodying our beauty and our wholeness. Maybe now you have a little bit more of a sense of what I mean by our beauty and our wholeness in our lives and in the world. It's already here. If we want the more mindful society, it's not going to happen at any other time. There's so many things happening now, here at Lesley, with the new courses coming online around mindfulness, the new sort of, what do you call it, initiative, or what do you call it? What's the noun?
Mindfulness studies.
Mindfulness studies. But what's it called? What's the kind of category of that thing?
Concentration.
A concentration. Okay, so you know, you go to Harvard, I don't think they have a concentration in mindfulness studies yet. They will. And they'll probably say they invented it when they do come. But we'll know better. We'll know better. But this is, in some sense, we're returning to who we are as a species. We named ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens. It's a very arrogant appellation. Except from the Latin sapere, which means to taste. So again, a sense, or to know, non-conceptual knowing. So we're the species that knows and knows that it knows. I don't think so. Not yet. But what if we actually took this seriously? I mean, with a lot of humor. Because it's too serious to take too seriously. But also did it with a tremendous amount of integrity and discipline. Because I'm not kidding, it's the hardest work in the world. Just to take your seat for 5 minutes and be present and be open-hearted is hard because we're so conditioned to actually fall into the me as the center of the universe movie. And you don't have to shut off that movie. All you need to do is be bigger than it, and you already are. It's a matter of just knowing it, which is, you know, kissing cousin of not knowing, so it doesn't matter whether you say knowing or not knowing. But it's not conceptual. It's awareness. And sometimes I like to use awareness as a present participle. Because I was at a meeting a long time ago, 15 years ago, where a Native American said to the other people around the table, almost all of whom were white, said, "You white people, you live in a world of nouns. We native people, we live in a world of verbs. Our world's alive. The nouns kill it." So, since awareness is a noun, I have adopted a new vocabulary. The nice thing about the land of the free is that we can do whatever the hell we want. So I've adopted a new vocabulary, which is that every once in a while I will use awareness as a present participle. I like present participle because it's present. Okay? And it's also, there's no subject and no object. It's not anybody doing anything. It's just awareness-ing. It's just awareness-ing. It's a process. It's not an end point. So how about we do a little, I can't say do, but how about we drop in on a little awareness-ing for a moment or two, okay? And it will only be a moment or two. I don't want to sort of extend things out too much because we're going to then move into dialogue. But let's at least take a moment. And you can do this lying on the floor, although this is not a great floor to lie on. You can do it, and at night, of course, lying down meditation is an occupational hazard that you will fall asleep. And if you'll remember, what meditation's about is wakefulness. So think of this as falling awake. You'll say, oh, it's too late. That's a thought. That's just a thought. One moment you say, oh, I'm too tired. That's just a thought. You hear what I'm saying? So, like, see if you can, just for fun, adopt a posture that for you embodies dignity and wakefulness right now, on Monday night, at this particular moment. And seeing if you can be aware of your body sitting on your chair, or standing if you're standing, aware of your feet on the floor, aware of the elevation of the spine, aware of the air around the body, and then reestablish awareness of this moment in its fullness. Awarenessing. And seeing if you can actually rest in the awareness, so that no effort is really required. It's effortless. There's an ease to it. There's no striving. There's no forcing. There's no hunting down some desirable feeling state. It's just this: sitting, breathing, being yourself. Thoughts come, thoughts go. Moods come, moods go. Like weather patterns in the mind. Sensations come, sensations go, like weather patterns in the body. Meanwhile, you just sit, mountain-like, being awake. And sitting as if your life depended on it. Because it does. In more ways than you think. And in more ways than you can possibly think. Another way to put it is just befriending silence, befriending stillness, befriending and inhabiting wakefulness. Moment by moment by moment, and breath by breath by breath. Noticing if it's possible to step out of clock time altogether and simply be here now, in the timeless quality of the present moment, unfolding. So letting go of the past 100%. Letting go of the future 100%. And allowing yourself to be cradled in the present moment in full awareness. As if that itself were an act of sanity and an act of loving kindness and an act of a radical act of love. To simply drop into being. and wakefulness and heartfulness in the only moment you ever can. Now, if we were on retreat together, or you were in an MBSR class or in Nancy's class, this period of formal practice might go on for another 45 minutes with no words at all. It would be the same awareness the whole time, only you'd probably find yourself going in and out of it. The mind wanders, you bring it back, and so forth. But in this kind of environment, I think, and given the lateness of the hour and the heterogeneity of your experience with meditation, I think we'll just leave the formal practice at that for the evening. I'd like to say, that I didn't exactly tell that story about the cardiologist correctly. I mean, what I meant to say was that it's like asking a cardiologist not to exercise, because it would, even if they think exercise is good for the heart, because then they'd be subjective about the, other person's treatment. So there are, sort of the limitations of that view of, objectivity versus subjectivity in science is really, in some sense, being, sort of completely discredited, because people will know for a long time that objectivity in science is enormous bias in science, and some of it is actually valuable, and but we need to be aware of it, because it's when we're not aware of our biases, or we're not aware of, just like we're not aware of our conflict of interest or potential or even apparent conflicts of interest, then that's when we get into trouble.